What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Nickel City Rush Hour. This is our first of 5 Gridiron Battles. It's going to be a lot of fun where we go position group by position group and we score each round using a 10-point scoring system of boxing. Representing the Buffalo Bills will be Mr. Jake Podger right there next to the stadium. I think he's within 5 minutes. And then Dolphin Keith representing the Miami Dolphins. You can find Dolphin Keith on the AFC East Summit every Tuesday. Actually, you guys start a little earlier now, right? It's 7:30 p.m.
7:30.
Eastern.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
right.
And then Mr. Podger, you can find him on the summit. And of course, you can find him with me on the rush hour all the time. So it's going to be a lot of fun, guys. Like I said, you can score it when you talk about these position groups. You can score it a 10-9 if you think your position group wins. If you feel like your position group is just way better than the other one, you can score a knockdown. That's a 10-8. And for the first time this year, we're introducing the knockout. If you have a position group that is just so much better and you feel deserves a knockout, you can score it a knockout and say, which will be scored as a 10-7. 10-10s are allowed. We used to never allow that. But if you guys can't come to an agreement, then we're going to score it a 10-10. It is frowned upon in the boxing community, and it is frowned upon in this show as well. But we'll allow it. We'll allow it if you guys can't come to an agreement. Last year and previous years, this is like our third year doing this, we would use PFF. If you guys couldn't come to an agreement, we'd throw it to PFF, we'd give them a call, and we'd say who a PFF thinks is the best. This year, PFF is in the background. They are also keeping a scorecard. So at the end of this, guys, we're going to add them all up and see who wins this battle. You guys ready?
Ready.
Heck yeah.
All right. So we're going to put you on a timer as well. We're going to keep this as short as possible tonight. And the only way to do that is put you guys on a timer. So I'm going to have, our guest, Keith, start things off. And remember, guys, when you talk about this, you're going to say at some point during your conversation about your position group, you're going to say what you think they win. It's a knockout, knockdown. You can even concede a position group if you would like. So let's get this started. Dolphin Keith, you are first on the clock, and you're going to be talking about the defensive line. Round one. Oh, hold on. We got a special guest. Let's get this kicked off by going to ringside real quick.
For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Nobody does it better in the business. Let's go. Round one, defensive line. Keith, you are on the clock.
Okay, defensive line. This is a position group of I'm not proud of this one for the Dolphins. They lost their best defensive lineman in free agency. They lost Christian Wilkins to the Raiders, signed a big contract. It's worth noting that the Dolphins could have re-signed him, but that would have been kind of re-sign Christian Wilkins to spite 5 other positions on their team. So instead of re-signing Christian Wilkins, the Dolphins kind of went with a bunch of guys who are limited in what they can do. So they re-signed Zach Sealer to a contract last season. Decent lineman. He's better suited in a Robin role, not a Batman role, but he's going to be Batman on this line. They signed Tyre Tart away from the Texans this offseason. They had Deshaun Hand. They signed Jonathan Harris away from the Broncos, Benito Jones. Neville Gallimore, they signed away from Dallas. There's a theme here, and it's not very good as far as the Dolphins are concerned. And then I look at the Bills' depth chart. Greg Rousseau, Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver, AJ Epinesa. You go down the list. They drafted Dwayne Carter in the 3rd round this draft. Von Miller is still on the roster. This is a group that's pretty stacked. So in this first round, I'm going to have to go with a 10-8 round in favor of the Bills.
Ooh.
The Dolphins' defensive line is not up to snuff. And I'm hoping they're going to bring in a guy like maybe Calais Campbell, who's still out there in free agency. I don't think they're done. There's some June 1st money coming their way. But right now, the Bills have a far superior line.
Wow, so you're scoring this at 10-8, Keith. And by the way, if you see the timer, you got to go a little bit over. Feel free to do so. That's just to kind of keep us in line right there. Talk a little bit more because the big thing is both Jalen Phillips and Chubb were injured late in the season last year, right?
Yeah, but those guys are actually considered linebackers in the Dolphins.
Okay.
So I'm going to save them for the linebacker talk. For right now, you're looking at a 3-4 base for the Dolphins and 3 down linemen. Now, I know we talked before, Mike, how it's supposed to be maybe four down linemen, in which case you're bringing in one of the edges. I mean, these edge guys, these Jalen Phillips, these Bradley Chubbs, these Chop Robinsons, they're kind of hybrids. So I don't really know whether to consider them linebackers or defensive ends, but I'm going to consider them linebackers for our exercise tonight. And as a result, the defensive line for the Dolphins is lacking as compared to the Bills.
All righty. Well, Jake, it seems like he's handed you a gimme, but let's talk about our D-line, and let me put you on the clock and see if you agree. And let's go, sir.
Keith, way to just hand it over on a platter to me, brother. I appreciate it. And that was going to be my question to you is like, hey, I know technically you guys play that 3-4 base defense, so we're not going to consider your edge guys a part of this. And with that being said, I think it does make this a lot easier for me. Now, while you look at the Bills' defensive line, I think it's really, really solid across the board with guys that are really, really good as well. Ed Oliver, who I think had, potentially like an all-pro season last year. He's a top 5 defensive tackle in the NFL, in my opinion. We re-signed Daquan Jones, and we did bring in some veteran depth, which is really good to see. Dwayne Carter, of course, in the 3rd round, like you mentioned. And then you look at the defensive ends. We did re-sign AJ Epinesa. We did let Leonard Floyd walk, which I'm okay with. So it was like 1 for 1 there. Still have Greg Rousseau. We signed Dwayne Smoot. Von Miller still on the team. Actually looked good towards the end of the year. I think you bring all that together. I said, in our schedule release show that one of our strengths compared to the Dolphins was our defensive line. Yeah. So to me, I'm gonna call this 10-8 as well. Bills.
Wow. All right.
Yes.
Made that easy. A little bit surprised from my side, but you know what? I'm not scoring this battle here. So first of all, let me say hi to some folks that might be out there. Let's see. Tom, good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. And Jessica, thanks for joining us tonight. And track reviewer, good to see you out there. So let's continue on here. Let me go back over here. And round number 2 is going to be the linebackers. And this time we will be starting with Mr. Podgers. By the way, I got to sound the bell. That was the end of round 1. And in round 1, Jake came with a nice overhand smash to the head, couple jabs, and knocked Dolphin Keith down. Now, to Dolphin Keith's credit, he got up, stood up at the count of 9. Was able to get back up on his feet. So let's keep going here. Round number 2. And we're going to be talking about linebackers. Jake, you are first on the clock.
Real quick, shame on me. You're absolutely right, Trek Reviewer. How could I forget one of my draft crushes, Javon Solomon? I absolutely love this kid out of Troy. Incredible value in the 5th round. So thanks for keeping me on point there. Looking at the linebacker position, it is interesting because now you are factoring in those guys for Keith, his edge rushers, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, and then, of course, the newest member, Chop Robinson. So that makes things a little bit more difficult. Now, we also had, so you guys, both the 2 veterans, Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, both with season-ending injuries, right? We also had Matt Milano, who had a season-ending injury. So you don't know. You hope it's going to be the best version of them that comes back, but you just don't know, right? So I guess you put that aside. You look at the starting linebackers for each team, Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard versus those guys, right? It's tough, man, because they're different skill sets. Matt Milano is really what makes this. He's the heart and soul of this defense. We definitely were missing him a lot last year. Terrell Bernard ended up having a phenomenal year. I like the depth that we did add to this team, including guys like Nicholas Murrow and Deion Jones. But man, I mean, you got some dogs in those edge rushers, and I think that's really what's going to make your defense go. If they can come back healthy, this is assuming that this is close, Keith, but I'm going to give it to you just because you also can factor in David Long and Jordan Brooks, who I really like the Jordan Brooks signing for you guys. So I think it's a slight edge for you guys just based on the amount of linebackers that you have in this defense, including those edge rushers.
All right. So, Keith, here we go. You gave him something pretty easy to start in round one. Round two, he's kind of given it to you already, but I want you to talk about your guys and see if you agree with Jake on this. So let me reset the clock here for you. You guys are doing great on time, by the way. Appreciate that.
I'm trying my best.
There we go. Keith, you're on the clock.
So I do agree with Jake, but only insofar as saying that you can't really factor in Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, just like you can't factor in Matt Milano. You don't know what version of these players you're gonna get going into the season. So when I look at the Dolphins linebackers, I look at Chop Robinson, a guy who I'm not very high on. I look at Shaquille Barrett. I look at Muhammad Kamara, a guy who I'm much higher on. I look at Jordan Brooks, a guy who I'm very high on. He's a very clear upgrade over Jerome Baker, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then David Long, who was kind of miscast in Vic Fangio's scheme last year, but I think he's going to be asked to do more of what he does best in Anthony Weaver's scheme, the Dolphins' new defensive coordinator. And then, I look at the Bills linebackers. I look at Matt Milano, who is going to be back by week 1. And I'll say that because he will be back, whereas I'm not sure that the Dolphins' 2 linebackers, Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, will be back by week 1. Terrell Bernard had a nice season. Terrell Bernard had a nice season. I still think that in spite of the fact that I'm not counting on my guys, my Jalen Phillips, my Bradley Chubb, guys who were having monster seasons for the Dolphins last year, Bradley Chubb especially, he was playing the best football of his career before he went down. In spite of the fact that I can't count on those guys, I'm still giving the edge to the Dolphins. They've worked hard on their depth, and I will give them credit for that. Also, I love Muhammad Kamara. I love the chip on his shoulder that he plays with. I've left out Chop Robinson because I'm not as high on him as the rest of the world seems to be. But I love the depth the Dolphins have at linebacker. When Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb do come back, it's just going to be a bonus for him.
All right. In that round, we scored a 10-9. Close round. Jake took a few jabs, got shook a little bit off the ropes, but he was able to work his way back. So 10-9 round for the Dolphins, given the linebacker room to the Dolphins. Just the FYI, when PFF, the judge who's out here scoring, by the way, he wanted to remain silent. He's off to the side. Before he did this, he talked to Keith about the rules of how PFF was going to be used, and we used a nickel defense as comparison. Because Bills run their base D is nickel, and so those guys like Jalen Phillips and Chubb, they were counted as the edge rushers on the front 4 there for the Dolphins. So just FYI, when we go to the cards for PFF, if it's a little bit different, you'll understand why. Okay. So let's see here. Let's go into round 3, and we're going to be talking about the cornerbacks. And Mr. Dolphin Keith, you were going to be starting us off, sir. So let's go.
All right. Well, I guess I should start with Jalen Ramsey, right? Because that's where the Dolphins cornerback room kind of starts for them. He's still a top 5 corner in the league, and he kind of proved that last year. He also showed his versatility a little bit because he was asked to do things in Vic Fangio's scheme that he wasn't really ever asked to do before in his career, which is play a more passive zone. And that's not something that Jalen Ramsey, that wasn't in his golf bag before. He was more of a press man corner. On the other side, the Dolphins signed Kendall Fuller to replace Xavier Howard, which is an upgrade. Xavier Howard had lost more than a few steps, and Kendall Fuller is a very solid cornerback. I really like what they did there. In the slot, the Dolphins are going to have Cater Kohu come back, who's a much better slot cornerback than he is outside cornerback. And I think the Dolphins realized that with their injuries at the cornerback position last year. They didn't ask Cater Kohu to play on the outside. They instead signed Eli Apple, who got burnt repeatedly. But I look at the Bills. I don't dislike their cornerbacks. I don't dislike Christian Benford. I don't dislike Rasul Douglas. But I do think the Dolphins have an edge here. I really do. Kaiir Elam kind of came on a little bit for them last year. This is another 10-9 round in favor of the Dolphins, in my opinion. Jalen Ramsey Jalen Ramsey and Kendall Fuller, that combination is just better than what the Bills have. And I'm not going to go 10-8. I'm not going to say I knocked Jake down here, but I will say it's a 10-9 round, absolutely.
So I just want to remind you, Mr. Dolphin Keith, don't forget to consider your nickel corner as well.
Yeah, I brought Cater Kohu into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Podger, what do you have to say for that? And you are on the clock, sir.
Yeah, when you go player to player, right? Starter to starter, your number one corner is Jalen Ramsey. Ours is Rasul Douglas. And Rasul Douglas had a really good year with us last year. I think he's an excellent corner, but I don't put him at the same level as Jalen Ramsey. So I'm going to give you that one there. And then when you look at the other corners, Christian Benford versus Kendall Fuller, I think Kendall Fuller has a slight edge there as well. The only spot that we're really, I think, outdoing you by a long shot is at the nickel corner position. Taron Johnson, who's a top 3 nickel in this league, right? Kader Kohu, solid player, but he's not Taron Johnson. So I think we do a little bit better at that position than you guys. But the other two, the two outside corner positions, I think you guys have a little bit of a lead there. So I'm going to give this one to you too, Keith. Depth-wise, I mean, it's kind of similar in my opinion. We do have Kaiir Elam, who we don't really know, again, what's going to happen with him. Bringing a new DBs coach that it might help him a little bit, specifically with the scheme and whatnot. You guys took away Saran Neal from us, so thank you for that. And I don't mean thank you for that. I'm going to miss that guy a lot. But again, I mean, looking at the defensive side of things, depth side of things on the defensive back side, pretty similar in my opinion. So I'm going to give you a slight edge there. We'll give this round to Keith.
All right, 10-9 round favoring the Dolphins. Get the scorecard updated for you too. And we're going into round 4. And let's see, this would be Jake's time to start. We're going to be talking about the safeties. So let me get the timer restart there, Jake. Give me a second. And we'll get you going here. So you are on the clock, Jake, talking about the safeties.
Yeah. Javon Holland's a stud, man. And then you went ahead and signed Jordan Poyer. And, if this was a year ago, I would have been like, man, incredible move. But Jordan Poyer is on his back 9. This might be maybe his last season as a pro. You just don't know. We did see a noticeable decline last year. For us, we have Taylor Rapp, who has had some really good seasons in LA prior to coming to Buffalo. Last year was kind of a learning experience for him, playing in more of a rotational role. And then we drafted Cole Bishop. And then we signed Mike Edwards, D. Delaney, and some other guys as depth pieces. To me, I think the game changer in this one is Javon Holland. Even though he was banged up last year and he let up some big plays, I still think he is a really good safety. Jordan Poyer has high IQ. He's been banged up, though, and we noticed a little bit of a drop-off last year. So do I, matching him up to like Taylor Rapp? I would say they're kind of somewhat similar. Right now at the free safety position, Javon Holland compared to like a Cole Bishop's a rookie. So it's hard to really put him over Javon Holland. Now, I think Cole Bishop is going to be like the next Harrison Smith, but it's hard to say right now, So I think I'm going to give you a slight advantage just because of that alone. So I'm going to call this 10-9, Keith. This is hurting me a little bit.
Interesting on this one. All right.
Yeah.
So Keith, let me rewind the clock here. And let's see if you agree or disagree. You're on the clock, sir. Go ahead.
I actually disagree with you, Jake. With one caveat. I never saw this as a win for the Dolphins. I honestly see this as a 10-10 round or 9-9 round, whatever. I see this as a tie because I like your depth. When Javon Holland went out last year, they had
Yeah.
Deshaun Elliott playing in the back. Javon Holland, he sprained the MCLs in both of his knees, and he was hobbled the rest of the season. And there was a stark decline in the Dolphins' safety play the rest of the season. And the Dolphins didn't really do much to address that as far as depth is concerned. They're talking about moving Nick Needham, normally a slot cornerback, to one of the safety positions. I like it, but it's not enough. So while I think Javon Holland is the difference maker here, I think he's the best out of all the safeties. I think he's better than Taylor Rapp. And Cole Bishop, he may well be good, but I think safety is one of the positions where you have to kind of be in the league for a little bit and learn how to trust your eyes, learn better instincts in order to become as good of a safety as you can be. And Cole Bishop isn't there yet. I think he's going to be a good player. I think you guys got a hell of a safety there, but not this season. So personally, I'm scoring at 10-10. Sorry, Mike, but I am.
Wow, the fans are booing on this one. The fans are booing.
Yeah.
Jake's not going to disagree with that. He says, "I'll take it." I was already conceding the safeties.
Wow.
To you.
I just like your depth. I like that you have.
Yeah, I will say I think we're better there. I mean, you guys drafted Patrick McMorris.
Oh yeah, round, Patrick McMorris. Another guy who I'm absolutely in love with.
Yeah.
throw him in the Chop Robinson pile, baby.
I will not have him on my bingo card.
Yeah.
The PFF judge was just jumping up and down on that score. He's like, what the heck am I hearing these guys say? A 10-10 round. But we'll see what the PFF judge says at the end of this. So here we go. We're moving over to the offensive side. And I believe it is, let's see, Keith is going to be Keith who starts us off on the O-line. And let me get the timer up. And Keith, it's all yours.
O-line. The bane of my existence. The Dolphins, I wanted them so badly to address the interior of their offensive line this offseason. And they brought in Aaron Brewer, who's good in the run, terrible against the pass, really light. He's about 280 pounds, and that's because I'm feeling generous right now. At left guard, they brought back Isaiah Wynn, who was playing decent football before he got hurt. At right guard, you've got some combination of maybe Robert Jones, Liam Eichenberg, potentially Jack Driscoll, who they brought in from the Eagles. Teron Armstead on the left side, nice player, great player, honestly. But he's, again, on the back nine and always been injury prone. Behind him, you've got Kendall Lamb, you've got Patrick Paul, who the Dolphins drafted in the second round. I don't think he's quite ready to step in for Teron Armstead yet. You've just got a bunch of – I don't love the Dolphins' offensive line. And I know the Bills' offensive line, they were much improved last year. So I'm giving this a 10-9 round for the Bills. I don't think this is a knockdown. I think Osiris Torrance is a nice player. Spencer Brown had a great season. Deion Dawkins is obviously a standout. You're going to have to figure out the center position with Cedric Van Pran versus Connor McGovern. But this is a 10-9 round in favor of Jake. If the Dolphins had done just a little bit more to address their offensive line, I would probably maybe be more inclined to make this a 10-10 round. I wanted them to do something more in the draft than what they did. And I've talked so much about the offensive line. Jake's heard it all. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right. Yeah. Mr. Podger, you are now on the board. He's giving you this round. Do you agree or disagree?
I 100% agree. I'm sorry, Keith.
Yeah, of course.
We talked about this a lot. By the way, I do want to respond quickly to Jessica. If he comes back, he's going to be playing Buffalo. So it may be a mid-season signing, if anything. But yes, that would be very interesting to see if Micah Hyde made a return. I hope it doesn't happen because that means someone probably went down with an injury. But yes, going back to the offensive line, this was a top 5 offensive line last year in football. Now, the biggest question mark, obviously, is going to be at that center position. We lost the quarterback of our offensive line in Mitch Morse. He goes to Jacksonville. Now we have Connor McGovern potentially switching from left guard to center. He is right now penciled in as the starting center. But we got incredible value with a young man named Cedric Van Pran Granger in the 5th round. And I honestly think this kid is too good to keep off the field, to the point where you may have to move Connor McGovern back to left guard and play Cedric Van Pran Granger at center. If that was the case right now, I would give this probably a 10-8, but because it's not, I'm going to call it a 10-9. I think when you look across the board here, Terran Armstead is still a good left tackle. The problem is you guys have durability concerns, and it really starts with him, right?
Yeah.
When you look at the Bills' offensive line, I don't want to curse him, knock on wood. The same offensive line played just about, I think, every snap last year almost. So very impressive. We had the same starters every single game. And, you hope, obviously, that they can continue that this year. But, yeah, Osiris Torrance was actually the only guy, I think, on the offensive line to play every single snap, which is incredible as a rookie and a ton of promise in that kid, obviously. I love the offensive line. I love what we did last year. But because there is a little bit of a question mark at the center position, we might take a little bit of a step back, some growing pains there. We'll call this a 10-9 round, Bills.
All righty. Good stuff there. All right, we're going to be going into round number 6. And right now, it's a close battle. I don't know what the corners are talking about here at the break. Keith, you got to be telling your guys, hey, I feel we're a little bit down on the card right now. I need you to come out swinging hard. We don't need the knockout. Just get back to our game. Jake's over there just telling his guys, stay clean. Don't get dirty. Be smart. Don't let Dolphin Keith catch you with something sneaky. So let's go. We're going to move into round 6 with the tight ends. And I think this is Mr. Podger's round to kick things off. Let me get the timer up on the board here. And let's see. There we go. You're on the board, Mr. Podger.
Well, you didn't get your guy Ben Sinnott, but you did end up signing Jonnu Smith in the offseason. And listen, while I like Jonnu Smith, he doesn't scare me. We have 2 tight ends, a former Pro Bowler and Dawson Knox, who hopefully will come back from an injury and be a better version of what he was last year, because he definitely had a down year. But then we got the young budding star in Dalton Kincaid, who, in my opinion, I think he's going to catch 100 passes this year. Like, I feel like the offense is going to run through him, and then the other guys are just contributors, right? So with that being said, Keith, I'm going to call this one a total knockout. Our tight end room is one of the best in the league. I feel very confident saying that. I mean, you even go down to the 3rd string tight end and Quentin Morris. That dude can catch the football. He's super athletic himself. And this is no disrespect to Durham Smythe or Julian Hill or any of your other guys, right? I just feel like we're better in that room. So I'm going to confidently call this one a TKO.
Wow. The first call for a TKO using the new rules this year.
That's right.
Keith, let me get the timer reset because, you're going to have to battle for this one here. Jake's thrown some massive punches. Massive.
There we go. Had to do it.
All right. So let me start the timer for you, sir, and let you have your rebuttal here. So give me a second here to get that timer going.
Yep.
And here we go, sir. You are on the clock.
Yeah, this is a 10-8 round in favor of Jake. I completely agree. I can't really deny it. Dawson Knox, good tight end, been a good tight end for a while, and Dalton Kincaid, he just looks like a stud in the making. And I like what the Dolphins did, and I like that they brought in Jonnu Smith and just at least gave themselves the threat of a tight end catching a ball. But
yeah,
they had Durham Smythe last year. He doesn't strike fear in any defenses. And when he went out last year, the Dolphins really felt it because Julian Hill wasn't ready. Julian Hill he was an undrafted free agent. He's got good athleticism, but he had some key holding penalties, some key drops, and some key situations. The Dolphins really felt their lack of a decent tight end, the lack of tight end depth last year, and I think this is a position group that Mike McDaniel doesn't seem to value all that much. So while I'll agree that the Bills tight end room is absolutely miles better than the Dolphins, I don't know that it's that big of a deal because Mike McDaniel doesn't seem to view it as that big of a deal. I mean, when the Dolphins had a great pass catching tight end in Mike Gesicki, they barely used the guy. So I'm just starting to want. I've been screaming for them to get a tight end in the draft or in free agency for 2 years, and all they bring back is Jonnu Smith. I'm just starting to think they don't care about the position and they don't value it very highly in their offense. Which is surprising because he coached George Kittle in San Francisco. He knows the value of a good tight end. But again, if he doesn't value tight end, then why should I? So I am going to go 10-8. Your tight end group is way better. But I'm starting to wonder if that's a big deal or not.
So, Dolphin Keith, we got to clarify this because Jake went for the knockout, which is a 10-7 round.
10-7.
You're saying a knockdown, which is a 10-8. Big difference.
Yes, it's a 10-8. It's a 10-8. Jonnu Smith's better than
Jonnu Smith's good. Yeah.
Jonnu Smith had a nice season for the Falcons last year. He didn't knock me out, especially considering the position groups that are coming up.
That's fair.
So
I had to go for the gut just because of that, Keith.
I think you had to go for the knockout because then the next round about to happen here.
That's what I'm saying. It's coming back full circle.
Jonnu Smith, first of all, I mean, drafted by Tennessee. I love the kid. I still don't understand why he hasn't succeeded. I mean, he's been with the Titans, played a little bit for the Patriots. He was one of the only guys to catch a pass in that hurricane game that the Pats beat us in a few years ago. But he's got good speed.
Yeah.
I just don't get what's happened with him. But I thought that was a nice signing. So 10-8, down goes Keith. Down goes Keith at the knockdown. But you're counting him out 8, 9. No, he's able to stand up, everyone.
Stumbling around a little bit.
Nice job, Keith, recovering there. Boy, we got a dandy going on here. But I'll tell you what, with that knockdown, Keith, you better be talking to your crew in between rounds here. I think they're screaming. They're telling you, cut the eye, cut it. Let's go.
Cut me, Nick. Cut me.
All right,
that was pretty good. Keith's a Philly guy too, so that really, I love that.
So we'll end that round, and we'll start the next round here, going to round 7, the wide receivers. And I forget whose turn it is to go, but I'm going to start with Dolphin Keith here. Let me get you on the clock, and the room is all yours, sir.
This is a 10-8 round. I don't think Jake's going to deny me this one. Look, I'm not going to say I knocked Jake out here, but Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, one of the best duos in the league. You bring in Odell Beckham Jr. for a little bit of depth, a little bit of run some routes in the slot. Malik Washington, who they drafted in the 6th round or 5th round, 6th rounds, one of those rounds. He's going to run some routes out of the slot. You still have Braxton Berrios, River Craycraft. This wide receiver room is absolutely loaded. It's been a strength of the Dolphins for the past few seasons. I don't expect that to change. And even if Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill has to miss a little bit of time, again, you have Odell Beckham Jr. to run outside routes for you. This is an elite wide receiver room, maybe the best wide receiver room in the league. And then you go over to the Bills side. You lost Stephon Diggs. You brought in Keon Coleman. You brought in Chase Claypool. You brought in, you brought in guys. You brought in, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel. None of those guys moved the needle. Jake knows it. I know it. Keon Coleman might turn into a good player, but this season, he's not. This season, the Bills receiving core doesn't hold a candle to the Dolphins. I'm not going to go 10-7 because, that seems a bit much, but this is as close to 10-7 as I'm going to get here because I've Jake's stumbling right now. I can guarantee you.
I'll tell you what, Keith. I actually thought you were going to call the knockout here, so I'm a little surprised. But
we haven't talked about running backs yet, Mike.
Oh, I know. We got some more here. Here we go. But Mr. Podger,
yeah. Do
you agree or do you disagree?
I disagree because I'm going to give Keith the 10-7 knockout.
Wow.
Yeah. Listen, this is no disrespect to some of the guys that we brought in. Curtis Samuel is a solid player. I think he could be very good in Joe Brady's offense, but there's just so many what ifs, right? You look at Khalil Shakir. Hopefully, he can build off of last year. We have a rookie X receiver, a starting rookie X, right? And then we have a lot of guys that would qualify as probably wide receiver 4s on a lot of teams. And Matt Collins, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Justin Shorter, Chase Claypool, KJ Hamler. I mean, we're kind of just piecing together a wide receiver room. And Keith mentioned, hey, like our tight ends, we don't really care about them. Well, this is why, because his receiver room is so loaded. I mean, you talk about even the depth you have. You got a starting slot receiver in the 6th round in Malik Washington. I mean, this kid's an absolute stud. And by the way, it's going to hurt our bet with Braxton Berrios. I'm not going to bet
Yes,
the
it
over
is.
on 40 catches for him this year, right? So check out the AFC East Summit show if you want to hear more about that.
Yep.
But yeah, Keith's receiver room, I mean, it's either 1 or 2 in the league, honestly, at this point. So it's hard to even hold a candle to this Dolphins receiving core. I think the Bills' receiving core is probably in the bottom 5, unfortunately. And I hate saying that. It hurts me to say that, but it's the truth, man. So they got a lot to prove.
Yeah, I agree, Jake. I thought for sure Keith would call this a knockout, but it was close, and you'll have to see what PFF has to say about that. They're like a cheat code. I mean, I think to myself, I'm going to go over to my Madden 24 game where Josh Allen's on the cover, and I'm going to give him the receivers of Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and OBJ. And I guarantee you he'll put up some crazy numbers that'll be insane. So, I mean, there's a lot to say. And I was teetering myself personally, knockout or knockdown for sure. But down goes Podger. Down goes Podger. He's on his feet. He's trying to get to his feet. 7, 8. He's got his hands on the rope. 9, 10. It's a knockout for the wide receiver room. Going to the Dolphins. Big first knockout that we've ever had in the Gridiron Battles. So good stuff there. I'll tell you whatever you said to him, Keith, in the corner, he came out firing. Cut the eye. Looks kind of nasty. But I'll tell you what, it was very impressive on that comeback. So here we go. This is another interesting round. We're going to go to the running backs. And Mr. Podger, you are going to be first on the board here. And here we go.
This is really tough. I think you look at starting running backs, James Cook versus Raheem Mostert. It's close. I mean, Raheem Mostert scores touchdowns, right? I mean, they're kind of similar backs, honestly. They're both super fast. They're outside zone guys. Like, that is an interesting battle. It's kind of close, to be honest with you. I think James Cook is obviously a little more upside there because he is younger. But in terms of ability, they're kind of similar, right? So then you go to the next level and you look at depth. You guys have Devon Achane, and you just drafted Jalen Wright, and you have Selvin Ahmed, Jeff Wilson Jr. I think you have Chris Brooks as well on the team. Yeah, I mean, you're loaded in the running back room right now. We drafted Ray Davis, who's a 24-year-old rookie, and I like the kid a lot. I think he's going to be a touchdown vulture this year. But again, it's hard to put a rookie over guys like Devon Achane, who just had a very good rookie season, who nearly averaged 10 yards a carry. And, of course, this is all borrowing whether he could stay healthy. But, like, our other guy is Ty Johnson. We have Frank Gore Jr., who may or may not even make the team. He could be a practice squad guy. And then Darrington Evans. Are we factoring fullbacks here?
Sure, you can.
It's a running back.
Okay. You guys have one of the best fullbacks in Alec Ingold. And listen, I love Sledge. I love Reggie Gilliam, but I don't know if he's as good as Alec Ingold. Both super good athletes, right? So I think with all that being said, I'm going to give this one to Keith. I'm going to call it it's hard to go. Do we go 10-8 here? I don't know, man. Your depth is just so much better than ours, I feel like. And that's really the game changer. I mean, you have guys that can maybe even start on other teams, Devon Achane or Jeff Wilson Jr., still a very good running back, has started some games in this league, right? I don't know if we have that same amount of skill set there. I don't see it. So maybe we'll call this one a 10-8. Hate to say it.
All right, Keith.
Yeah.
You agree or disagree? Should it be a knockout, or are you going to stay with what Ms. Podger's saying? A knockdown. You are on the board, sir.
I think this is another knockdown round. I think it's a 10-8 round in favor of the Dolphins. You look at Raheem Mostert. He had his first 1,000-yard season last year at the age of 31 years old. He's going to be 32 this year, but Then you look at the amount of carries that he had up until he was about 28, 29 years old, and they were very minimal. He was dealing with being on practice squads. He was dealing with injuries. There's not as much wear and tear on his tires as you would expect from a 32-year-old back. And he led the league in touchdowns last year, 18 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Devon Achane burst on the scene last year. The guy is grease lightning. He's so fast. He did some great things for the Dolphins last year. They need to limit his touches because he is on the smaller side. They brought in Jalen Wright. They traded away a third-round pick next year in order to draft Jalen Wright in the fourth round this year. That's what they thought about this kid. He's got all the intangibles. He's got all the measurables that you would want. He's a little bit bigger. He's stronger. He's fast. He ran a 4.37, I think, 40 at the combine. And then, you get into the depth pieces. Salvin Ahmed, who's played some meaningful minutes for the Dolphins. Jeff Wilson Jr., Chris Brooks. And then, of course, Alec Ingold. He went to the Pro Bowl as a fullback for the Dolphins last year. So their depth is just their depth is kind of second to none. They have probably the deepest running back room in the league right now. Whereas the Bills, they have James Cook, proven back, very good back. But past that, not really a whole lot. So if anything happens to James Cook, you have to wonder who's going to be getting the carries in Buffalo, and you have to wonder how effective they're going to be. Whereas you don't really have to wonder that too much in Miami.
You guys can flip and flop.
Yeah, if the top 2 or 3 guys go down, they have guys who are going to play some meaningful snaps and do a pretty darn good job of it.
Yeah.
So 10-8 is what you're saying here, guys?
Yes.
Yeah, I think 10-8. Yep.
All right. Did you mention Ray Davis? I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep.
I did.
I
did. Yes.
Ray Davis. So that to me would it depends on how
he's a good player.
Ray Davis,
He's a rookie. It's hard to say.
I know. But you got Ty Johnson. So 10-8. Down goes. Look, Jay comes out. He was knocked knocked out in round 7. He comes out of the gate in round 8, and he down goes Podger. Down goes Podger again. I don't know, guys. This is getting worrisome here. 10-8 round. Jake, you better be talking to the guys in the corner right now because things are looking bleak after these round 7 and round 8. You had a knockout in round 7 and a knockdown in round 8. Here we go, man. We're going round 9. We only have round 9 and round 10. We got the quarterbacks to talk about and then the coachings. So let me get you on the clock, Mr. Podger. You're going to go first in this round. Let me get this reset. There you go. The room is all yours, sir.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Allen I think he has 2 losses to the Dolphins in the last however many games, right? I mean, when you look at him compared to Tua, it's kind of a light years difference. Josh is a top 2 quarterback in the NFL right now. He's just behind Pat Mahomes. Tua is not. Tua is a good player. He's a good quarterback. Very good with timing routes. Love the kid. He's gritty. He's tough. But guess who else is gritty and tough? Josh Allen. Also, how many times have you seen Tua hurdle a grown man? Not that it matters. I'm just kind of throwing some other stuff into the mix here. I'm taking Josh Allen on the long side, and we're going to go 10-7 here.
Knockout.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
Had to do it. I mean, I gave him a couple others, so this is where we're going to make a little comeback.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see what Keith agrees or disagrees. Keith, you're muted, first of all. Make sure you're unmuted. And
by the way, Mitchell Trubisky is our backup quarterback who can start games if we need him to. Listen, he's not going to be Josh Allen, but, decent.
Like, he couldn't beat out Kenny Pickett, so I don't know, buddy. I mean, I love his athleticism.
And you know what? It was all just
we'll blame it on the teams that he played for, Pittsburgh and
right.
Chicago. We'll
Coaching.
say
Matt Canada was the OC.
Yeah, it was all them. I agree with you. All right, Mr. Dolphin Keith. This is a very deciding round here. So he's going for the knockout. I'm gonna, the room is all yours now.
Yeah, I'm certainly willing to concede that Josh Allen's the better quarterback. 10-7 though, I'm not going there. I was thinking 10-9 actually. Like, look, Josh Allen is the second best quarterback in the NFL. I'm not going to deny that. I think he's great. But if I can speak to Tua for a second here, every offseason Tua has been with the Dolphins, there's been a hole in his game, something that he needs to get better at. He comes back next season, he comes back a better quarterback for having fixed that hole. At first it was rehabbing his hip and doing better with the long ball, getting stronger. Last offseason it was being able to stay healthy, being able to play 17 games. So what did Tua do? He went and learned jiu-jitsu, learned to tuck his chin into his chest when he's getting sacked so his head doesn't bounce off the back of the turf. Hit the back of his head doesn't bounce off the turf. And lo and behold, the rest of the Dolphins fell apart on him last year, but Tua stayed healthy. Tua played 17 games.
Yeah.
Every offseason, Tua's gotten better. This offseason, I think he's going to probably work on scrambling, working within the pocket, extending plays a little bit, and that's going to make him a better quarterback. I say all this to say that Tua's an ascending player. Tua's still a quarterback who's getting better. He's gradually getting better, but he's getting better. Whereas I look at Josh Allen and I say, we've kind of reached the apex of the quarterback that Josh Allen's going to be. And that's not a knock on him. He's great just the way he is. But Tua is still getting better. And even so, he's a borderline top 10 quarterback. If Tua rounds into the player that I think he can be, the player that the Dolphins think he can be, we're talking about a borderline top 5 quarterback. Maybe as soon as this season. 10-9. Not 10-7.
Okay. All right. I like that, Keith. Hey, you make some very good points there, too. So maybe I am disrespecting you a little bit. So I can't. I'm willing to take that 10-7 off. I'm going to call it 10-8.
All right.
That's
fair
okay.
enough.
Wait, this is a big pivotal moment, guys. So it's big difference. You went 10-9.
Record says 12-6. Holy
Jay called for the knockout. He's saying no, 10-9, and now Jay, you're still saying it's at least a knockdown.
I think so. Right now,
I will concede a knockdown, but not a knockout. That's ridiculous.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah,
Tua led the league in passing yards last year.
He did.
That's not. You're not knocking him down.
Tua he is an underrated quarterback.
He is.
I feel like he is always. Yeah.
But the problem with Tua is that his limitations are on display for everybody to see. He's not the biggest guy, he's not the fastest guy, he's not the strongest guy, doesn't have the strongest arm. He's left-handed, which people don't like. They think that they're cool with it, but they haven't seen an effective left-handed quarterback since Steve Young. So, these are all
Mark
things
Brunell.
that Mark Brunell. So
you
you look at Tua and he's just not the prototypical number one quarterback, whereas Josh Allen looks the part and acts the part and is the part. It's so much easier to knock Tua without actually watching his game. You watch Tua operate sometimes, and he's, borderline masterful the way he fits balls into tight windows, even without the arm strength of Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Really, I'm a Tua fanboy. I'll be the first to admit it. And I think that they should extend him. Somebody, I think it was Jessica Tennis earlier on the show, asked if he should get an extension. I want him to get an extension. And Adam Schefter has said that the two sides aren't close. The Dolphins want to put some caveats in there to protect themselves, and they absolutely should. But Tua's camp is saying he played 17 games last year and he led the league in passing yards. Pay the man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jake, after being knocked out and then knocked down in round 8, comes back strong. I don't know what he told his guys, but down goes Keith. Down goes Keith in round 9. Bills score a 10-8 round. Be interesting to see what PFF says here, but I'm a little surprised. I mean, if you were going off of that and all that you said, Keith, what Tua was able to do last year, he's not the quarterback that Josh is. Josh can just do everything, but you can't disrespect Tua either, because like you said, he's still ascending. He's got a cheat code in front of him, so nothing but good things coming for that young man, and hope he gets paid, like you're saying. So, guys, I'm going to tell you what, we're getting into round 10, the final round, and better be talking to your guys in the corner right now, because this could decide this bout right now. This could decide it. Hold on. I'm bad at the sound. Sorry, we should have ended a few rounds. I didn't, but there we go. We just ended that round. And final round, guys. This is an important one, and this is the coaching. And whew, can't wait to hear your arguments on this side. And I think whose turn was it? Who went last?
I
My
went
turn.
first last.
All right.
Yep.
So Keith, you are on the clock talking about the coaching staff. And that includes your DC, your OC, and your head coach. And I don't care if you want to add in all the other coaches, but those are the main three. There we go. Room is yours.
So, I think Jake and I we're both pretty tired at the end of this boxing match. We're coming to the middle, and we're just kind of sizing each other up right now. And I think we're going to go toe to toe on this one, but I think this is a tie. I like Mike McDaniel more than I like Sean McDermott. I just do. I think Sean McDermott came this close to getting fired last year. Like one Dolphins win against the Titans from getting fired last year. One loss at the end of the season to getting fired last year. I think Sean McDermott's a decent coach, but I think his time in Buffalo is running out. Mike McDaniel, there's improvements he has to make, but I think he's steadily improving as well, just like Tua, just like his quarterback. They're learning, they're improving, they're getting better. I don't think there's a better play caller in the NFL right now. And then I look at the Dolphins, Frank Smith is kind of an extension of Mike McDaniel, so I'm just going to kind of group him in with Mike McDaniel. And then I look at Anthony Weaver, a guy who, well, he was the Texans defensive coordinator first, and he had absolutely no talent, and the Texans defense was terrible. But I think Anthony Weaver is going to bring in concepts that are going to help the Dolphins defense insofar as he's going to put these players in a better position to succeed than Vic Fangio did. I think Vic Fangio is very rigid in the defense that he calls. And he kind of fits his square peg players into round holes and just jams them in there. Whereas Anthony Weaver is going to see what his players do well and play to their strengths. He is obviously a rookie defensive coordinator, so we don't know what he's going to be. But I think Mike McDaniel is the better coach. I think the Bills' defensive play calling is probably better. How many playoff wins does McDaniels have?
Oh boy!
First of all, Jessica, it's McDaniel. And
yes.
Secondly, he's been in 2 playoff games. So one of which was without a starting quarterback, and the other one was in.
They almost won it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's lay off on that talk a little bit.
Sure.
I think it's a 10-10
That's fair.
round. I think it's a 10-10 round.
He's calling it a 10-10. All right. I'm going to stay out of this. I'm just, being the moderator here. So I'll keep my words to myself, but we'll listen to see what PFF, I will tell you this, cannot grade the coaching staff. Sorry. So that is for PFF. I'll give you spoiler alert. That's a 10-10 round from the PFF judge over here to my left. And he's talking to me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 10-10. He's saying, but Jake, what do you got to say on this? The room is yours. Coaching staff, buddy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Sean McDermott has I think 4-1 career record against Mike McDaniel. So when you're matching them up against each other right now, I think Sean McDermott does have his number, but Mike McDaniel is a fresher, newer, more innovative guy. He's definitely a sexier type of coach, right? But at the end of the day, Bills have I guess Sean McDermott has a better record, versus when you look at the head-to-head. So it's hard for me to put Mike McDaniel over him just because of that. Now, obviously, we've been helped because Josh Allen just seems to have his best games whenever we play the Miami Dolphins. And poor Keith over here, man, he's just, tearing his beard out, right? So
already tore my hair out.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't want to allude to that, but yes. But when you look at the coordinators, I do love Anthony Weaver compared to Bobby Babich. I think Anthony Weaver is definitely in a maybe it's a better spot because I feel like he's going to be able to call his own defense, whereas Bobby Babich has to follow Sean McDermott's defense. He could probably make some adjustments here and there, but and then also obviously what Anthony Weaver has to work with. It might be we're going to see a much better Dolphins, I guess, defensive scheme. I think Vic Fangio came in, he did some nice things. He had better players, but Anthony Weaver is going to have a much better scheme and a better fit for these players. So I think you guys will win in that category. So really what it comes down to is the OCs, right? So you guys have Frank Smith. We have Joe Brady. I like what Joe Brady did a lot last year. Frank Smith, I think capable OC, and he's got a lot of weapons to work with. So this is really close to me. I'm going to call it 10-9 just because of the career record. But it is close, and I don't mind Keith going 10-10 just because, end of the day, I think there's a lot of good upside with your coaching staff, Keith.
Well, the rules stipulate, we can have a 10-10, but after what Jake said, Keith, are you changing your mind at all?
No, I'm sticking with 10-10.
Okay.
Because, we went Frank, also Jake went, he was talking about Bobby Babich being influenced by Sean McDermott. Well, Frank Smith is influenced by Mike McDaniel.
That's true.
And Mike McDaniel, in the same way that Bobby Babich is influenced by Sean McDermott. And I just feel as though Mike McDaniel's play calling, the design of his offense, keeping teams constantly off balance, constantly keeping guys in motion, moving Tyreek Hill around the formation. If he's not the best play caller in the NFL, I'd like to know who is. Kyle Shanahan, perhaps.
Yeah.
I just think that's the difference maker. The Dolphins' offense, what they do on offense, the position they put their players in. I still think the coaching staffs are even. I'm not moving off of that.
All right, there you have it. Both teams make it through 10 rounds, and we're going to go to our corners. We're going to wait for the scorecards.
Baby.
In the meantime here, why don't you catch up with the chat a little bit, Jake, and let's see what they've been saying about this great gridiron battle.
Jessica does make a good point. Sean McDermott is experience, right? Like, he's definitely a more experienced head coach than Mike McDaniel. That doesn't always mean he's the better head coach.
Yeah.
He has turned this franchise around. There's no denying that, right? We've at least gotten a ticket to the dance.
Yes.
Almost every single season that he's been the head coach here as a Buffalo Bills coach, right?
Yeah.
That's all you can really ask for. Now, same deal with the Finns, right? You guys have gone 2 years. You almost beat the Bills last year with Skylar Thompson.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think there's a lot to love for you, Keith. But I do like what Jessica's saying here, and I think that's why I do call it the 10-9, just because of the record, the head-to-head there.
Well, I can certainly appreciate where you're coming from there. That doesn't feel like a coaching stat to me. It feels more like a quarterback stat to me.
Sure. Absolutely.
And Josh Allen absolutely kills the Dolphins.
Don't go there.
Josh Allen absolutely kills the Dolphins every time they play. It's maddening. Doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy feelings about Josh Allen, but look, it's close. It's really close between McDermott and McDaniel and the offensive and defensive coordinators. It's also muddled, especially when you look at McDaniel's influence over the offense, McDermott's influence over the defense. It's just, I understand where Jessica's coming from. McDermott has, second most wins over the last 5 years. That's true, but he almost lost his job last year. I don't think any of us is going to deny that. He was, and again, he's also probably an AFC Championship game or bust mode this year. If the Bills have another early exit in the playoffs, that could mean his job. Whereas McDaniel, his seat isn't warm at all right now.
Interesting. Well, the scorecards have been totaled. And I don't know. This is crazy. This just tells you basically whoever wins this. The whole point of this series is to determine who's going to win the Super Bowl. I'm just kidding. But it's going to show you. We're going to be having, this is what I say, 1 of 5. We're going to be talking about the Jets next week. We're going to be battling the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Texans, all teams we play this year. So those were the 5 we picked for this series. Of course, we had to start with the Dolphins. The team has been the runner-up to the Bills 3 of the last 4 seasons. And honestly, last year, still don't know how that happened, where they choked it away. Losing to Tennessee was the big one, but we were able to get in and win it. So always got to start with the Dolphins. And usually our title is, are the Dolphins the biggest threat to the Buffalo Bills in the East? This year we changed it around a little bit. Wanted to do Gridiron Battles as a title, and so it's a lot of fun. But without further ado, let's get to the scorecards here. So between the score, and let's recap here. Round 1, the Bills came out swinging with a 10-8 round, knockdown round of Keith. Round 2, Dolphins came back in the linebacker group and won 10-9, win for the Dolphins there. Round 3, cornerbacks. Edge also went to the Dolphins, 10-9. In the safety room, surprise here for me, 10-10, first tie, first 10-10. Again, fans don't like it. They're going to be looking into the judges here to see what the heck they're thinking. But then we switched over to the offensive side. On the old line, Bills got the edge with the 10-9 victory. Then in round 6 in the tight end room, big knockdown. Keith went down, but was able to get up 10-8 round there for the Buffalo Bills. But then, I don't know what Keith said. Well, we do know what he said. He said, cut the eye in the corner. They cut the eye. He comes out swinging with the wide receivers, and it's a knockout, 10-7. First knockout we've ever had in a Gridiron Battle. He then follows that up with a 10-8 round in the running back room. Another knockdown of Padre. Padre was just shaking there for 2 rounds, was getting whooped. I don't know what Jake said in the 9th round with the quarterback, but he came out back strong.
Gritty.
With a knockdown. Again, Keith was saying maybe not a knockdown, but in the end, they agreed on a knockdown. Josh Allen over Tua, so 10-8 round. Coaching, we ended up tying. Everyone gave their reasoning. And I can't go to PFF for this one because, again, I just defaulted it to 10-10 because they don't score it. So between these 2 guys, folks, believe it or not, they scored it 93 for Buffalo, 93 for the Dolphins.
Get out of here.
I am
Come on.
not kidding you.
Sean, that was not intentional.
Sean called it.
Yep.
No.
Sean knew it.
Sean knew it.
Said
Now,
we're going to tie because you guys just love up on each other too much. And that's okay, Keith. We'll let the guys on the field take care of business. We gave our reasoning,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
All right. Now let's go to PFF scorecard. PFF's been doing their job over here. And remember, we use the nickel D as the comparisons. We also just use the starters. We didn't factor in depth pieces here. So in round 1, where PFF had the Bills winning 10-9, edging them out 10-9. Round 2 in the linebacker was the Bills winning 10-9. And the reason, remember, it was the nickel D.
Right.
And Keith had mentioned who he thought would be those 2 starting linebackers. So it was 2 versus 2. So Bills got the edge there, 10-9. Again, Buffalo came out swinging hard at the cornerback room. PFF says, nope, it's not the Dolphins. It's the Bills with the edge, 10-9. Wow. And I'm looking at their PFF grades. Jalen Ramsey, believe it or not, and let me give you some numbers here, just where that all came from. Let me go over real quick. So let's see here. Cornerback. So Kendall Fuller was at 83.1. Kader Kahu, hopefully I'm saying his name right, 64.8. Jalen Ramsey, 65.6. On the Bills side, Taron Johnson, 77.5. Rasul Douglas, 81. Christian Benford, 83. Just to complete, they win that round easily. And that's what PFF said. So interested in how you guys scored that one. In the safety room, you guys scored it a 10-10, like I had said earlier. PFF's had this as a knockdown for the Fins, a knockdown. And again, I'm going off starters. You guys kind of added in depth, which again, I'm still, even with depth, and the star that you have, Keith, on your side at safety, to me, there's no way this was a 10-10, but I'm not scoring it. You scored a 10-10. PFF said, no way. This is a knockdown for the Fins. Fins scored that 10-8. We go to the old line. You guys scored it the same way as the PFF scorekeeper did, 10-9 there. In the tight end room, you guys scored it a knockdown 10-8. PFF had it as a 10-9, a little bit closer. Then over in the running back room, PFF agreed with you guys. 10-8 knockdown for the Dolphins there. Quarterback room. The PFF did not disrespect Tua. They gave this as a 10-9 round. Again, let me just give you some scores there. See that I have Josh there. It was close. I don't have that one marked down, but actually I might over here. Hold on one sec. Quarterbacks. Here I go. So PFF had Josh scored as a 92.1 and Tua as an 86.9 grade.
Ooh, wow.
So pretty darn close there. Go back to the scorecard. And then coaching, like I said. Oh, wait. I said wide receiver. Okay. Wide receiver.
What was receiver? Yeah.
Wide receiver, PFF scored it at 10-8. That was a difficult one. PFF went back and forth. The judge was talking to me on the side. That's why you saw me go off screen for a little bit. He's like, look, the big question mark is Kean Coleman. And what I did is I factored in Kean Coleman and what he did, PFF's guy. And he said what he did is he took the average wide receiver score for receivers drafted in the second round in 2023. Those included Jonathan Mingo from Carolina, Jaden Reed from Green Bay, Rashee Rice from KC, and Marvin Mims from Denver. Of those four, the average score was 69. So with that score in there, and for what the judge said here, if it had been anything over a 10 point difference, average was a knockdown. Anything over a 20 and nothing got there would have been a knockout. But depending on how Kean Coleman does, at the bottom of that list was Jonathan Mingo. His grade was a 54.7, right? So if Kean Coleman ended up there, that could have been a knockout. But I took the average, and with the average, the wide receiver room was scored a 10-8 knockdown by PFF for the Fins. Fins came back strong in the running back room. Again, PFF says this is a knockdown, big time, 10-8. And then the Bills scored the quarterback 10-9. They win the 10-9. So keeping on math score here, believe it or not, PFF scores this 94 for Buffalo, 94 for the Dolphins, guys.
Get out of here.
I am not kidding you. I am not kidding you. Let me just
That's
for
nuts.
proof here.
Yeah.
So total score between the two, 187, 187. Just goes to show you. I know you guys didn't plan this ahead of time, but it's it just goes to show you, man, how close these teams are. And again, this is like I said, 3 out of the last 4 years, it's been the Dolphins. They should have won the AFC East last year. There was no reason they didn't. And I know, Keith, you were saying, this is why I've been hitting you up in Discord, by the way. If you haven't joined the Discord, please do. It's in the description of the show. It's free. Lots of fun. People talking all the time. But Keith, you're saying they're not even going to compete. Well, if that's the case, then Buffalo's not even going to compete because we just proved that you're going to compete. And you have some big edges on your side. Wide receiver, running back.
Yes.
I mean, those are huge, my friend. Those are huge.
All I'm going to say, Mike, is, and I said this before, and Jake knows how I feel about this. Football at its core is a game that's always going to be won and lost in the trenches. And the Dolphins didn't do enough to bolster their trenches this offseason. I think they're still going to put up electric points against bad teams. Teams like they're playing some weak teams this year. Teams like the Patriots, who the Bills obviously play as well. They're still going to do well at points throughout the season, but I think when the calendar turns from November to December to January, that's when you really feel the loss of that's when you really feel your offensive line not being as good as it could be. Your defensive line not being as good as it could be. And that's where I see the Dolphins really struggling. They seem like a team that's more flair and more that they have all the great position players, but where's the meat and potatoes guys?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you replace the biggest question is on the interior offensive line as well as the interior defensive line, right?
Yeah.
Christian Wilkins being gone, and then of course you lose Connor Williams and then Robert Hunt. And
Yeah.
those guys were really good players. I don't think Robert Hunt, I mean, he got well overpaid and good for him. He deserves
Yeah.
it, right? Like, hey, you go get yours.
Yeah.
But I don't think he qualifies as a top 5 guard in this league. He's a very solid starter, though, and he's a good player. And it's hard to just replace a guy like that, especially when you're doing it with Robert Jones, who's played a little bit, right? But like,
yeah.
And I don't put Aaron Brewer on the same level as Connor Williams. I think Connor Williams is a very good center for you guys, right? So
Yes, absolutely.
big question marks there. Yeah.
You know, there's June 1st money coming, and I think the Dolphins aren't done just yet. Connor Williams is still out there. Guys like Calais Campbell are still out there. We'll see what they do, because I do think that there's $18 million coming their way. They're not just going to let that, go to waste. So there's moves coming. I just don't know which moves are coming. Connor Williams would be another guy. He'd be a guy to bring back.
You say bring him back, right? Yeah.
Yeah. You know, when he went down last year, the Dolphins' offensive line kind of collapsed in on itself. They really felt his absence.
And he can play guard too, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
he's definitely done it
for Dallas.
Yeah.
That
would be, man.
But, 93, 93, 94, 94, that's pretty insane, Jake.
Yeah. I love that.
As much as Sean wanted to bust our chops for they're just going to tie because they're too nice. Like, look, Pro Football Focus saw it the same way we did.
I mean, yeah, right?
Yeah, they definitely did. And considering that you guys actually had some knockdowns and some knockouts, I don't think you were being nice at all. No. And I'm sure, I'm looking in the private chat. I'm thinking, did these guys work it out behind the scenes? And nope, there's no chat going on in the private. So I was like, Jake's probably doing the math in his head. Is like, dude, I need a 10-8 round with the quarterback to just tie things up. Can you give me a little help here? You kind of caved a little bit there. You could have stood strong with your 10-9 and you win this thing.
Well, he said 10-7 originally, and I said 10. I said 10-9. I was willing to split the difference with him, but I'm not going to go 10-7 there. That's just a disrespect for my boy.
That's fair. Yeah, I respect it, Keith. I respect it.
All right. Well, this was a lot of fun here, folks. I want to thank everyone for joining us out there in the channel. And if you're rewatching this, please let us know round by round who you think is the better of the two position groups for the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. But this one is a tie. So the Bills start out with the tie, and so do the Dolphins. Next week, we'll be starting the Gridiron Battle will be against the Jets. And I did a quick look at their PFF scores, and I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be an interesting one.
And we're talking about me being nice. Anthony's not nice.
Anthony ain't letting off. No.
Good luck with that. I'll be watching.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
So, Keith, I want to say thank you for joining us as always. It's a lot of fun. And Jake, great job as well. And until next time, we'll see you. First of all, you'll see them on the summit on Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. And you'll see Jake and I next Sunday. And till then, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Fins.
Go Bills. Got to get that in the last. Got